Hey there. So just to put a little ending on the last video, the one about the importance of the Old Testament and the story we find ourselves in, just what I wanted to conclude with was because I talked about we so often think in terms of how is something useful to me, So if the Old Testament doesn't have something for me to apply to my life right now, then it's of no use to me. I'm suggesting that's the wrong way of looking at it. Instead, I say we reorient ourselves. We're not the center of the universe. The Bible's not a story about me. God is the center of the universe. He's the meaning of everything. And we revolve around God. God doesn't revolve around me. And the Bible is about God. And so I say we try to, first and foremost, appreciate the Bible as a story about God and trying to learn more about Him and what He's done in the world, in history. And once we have understood the story of God and His dealing with humanity, then second of all, we can find our place in that story and then say, given that all this has happened and given what we know is going to happen, now, how does that influence the way I live now? So first it's about God, then it's about me, and me finding useful nuggets to apply to my life, so to speak. So that's just what I want to say about the point of the Old Testament. Now, the main question for this video is, what is the deal with all the laws? These laws are boring. These laws seem legalistic. There's no heart in them. They're just rules, regulations, rituals. They seem outdated, so on and so forth. So I actually have a few thoughts on it. Number one, it's so important to remember that these laws are not for salvation. At no point did God say, you need to follow these laws to go to heaven. Israel did actually not care about heaven. As I've been trying to say in this blog, heaven is not really mentioned in the Old Testament. So they were not trying to follow the laws to be forgiven of their sins to go to heaven. They were trying to follow the laws in order to honor their covenant with God. It's really kind of the same as the New Testament when you think about it. There's a bunch of things that Jesus and the Apostle Paul tell us to do in the New Testament, but we know that we do that because we have already been saved, not in order to be saved. It's a vital difference. So in the same way, God gave Himself in relationship to Israel, and then said, this is the best way that we can live in relationship with each other, is if you live in these ways. So these laws are actually the best ways that Israel can keep a healthy relationship with God. And is there anything more important for Israel than keeping a healthy relationship with God? I would say no. So it's actually out of love. God is saying, if you stray from doing these things, you will end up going in the direction of death, destruction, pain, suffering. evil, sin, so on and so forth. Secondly, the beauty of these laws is that they acknowledge the fact that we are physical beings who live in a physical world with practical responsibilities of like work and taking care of family. And so what God is saying is, I don't just care about what you do in the temple. I don't just care about what you do when you close your eyes and fold your hands to pray. I care about every single aspect of your physical, worldly life. I care about what you do when you're with your wife, when you're with your kids, when you're at work, when you're dealing with a neighbor as you walk down the street, when you accidentally damage someone else's crops. Every nook and cranny of Israel's life was to be filled with the life-giving presence of God. And that's actually a beautiful thing. God is not just sectioned off into the spiritual realm. God is here, there, and everywhere in everything we do. Next, we so often think of God in terms of like our best friend or like the cozy father. And again, in one very important sense, that's all true. But God is also Alpha and Omega, creator and sustainer of the universe, and if we see him face to face, we die. God. And so, really, by giving Israel those laws and saying, I am willing and ready to enter a relationship with you, and here's the best way that I can do that with you, it's actually a gift. God's presence and relationship is a gift to Israel. Really, it should not be expected that the great I am of the universe would enter into a relationship with us. We kind of take it for granted. And so for him to say, this is how it's going to be safe and healthy and so on, is a gift to Israel. Next, the laws kept Israel unique and separate in terms of their identity as opposed to other nations. It is so important. If Israel is going to be the light of the world, it's important that they not become like the world. And so a lot of the laws given are just for the sake of keeping them unique and giving them their own sort of identity and rituals and celebrations and that sort of thing. Because they needed to always keep it in their brain that they are not like the other nations, rather they are a light to the nations. Also, a lot of these laws just kept them safe. Like, if there's mold on your food, don't eat it type of laws. Because God was just concerned about Israel's safety. Also, some of the laws, like an eye for an eye. Nowadays, we think of that rule as like a terrible rule, like, oh, you get revenge on someone. It was actually to stop revenge, because a lot of the time, if someone, gouged out your eye, you would kill them, and kill all their family. And so God was actually saying, don't go to more extreme lengths to go get revenge on people. It should really just be an eye for an eye type of system. And so for that day and age, that was actually a very life-giving law. That's all I will say about laws.